Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Hausman-Rohde. Taking over for Jackie real quick here to kick off our program for today. Just real quickly, I'm going to make a couple remarks. I'm the executive director of Voyageurs National Park Association. So we're actually the nonprofit partner of the park. And we are a community-funded organization, and our members actually help us fund projects and programs that expand community engagement, youth education, land and water conservation, all at Voyageurs National Park. And we're really grateful to have you all with us today. So as a park partner, we are actually working with the National Park Service to seek dark sky park designation for Voyageurs, hence the impetus for this Night Explorer series. And I'm just so grateful to be working with volunteers like Bob King, who help us bring programs like this to the public, even during a pandemic, because I think it's really important for us all to be connecting with nature and the sky at home, even if we can't travel to Voyageurs National Park right now. Before we start the official program, I just want to share a few words about recent events in our local community. And our nonprofit organization, even though the park is in northern Minnesota, we're actually headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where George Floyd was recently killed. And the last couple weeks here in our community have been really both tragic and transformative. And at our organization, we postponed this program last week because we really needed to, as a team, take some time to grieve with our neighbors and our community, to volunteer locally, and to really take some extra time to listen to and to amplify Black voices. And obviously, we're seeing across the nation and the world that we're all wrestling with racial injustices within our Black community, and especially in the environmental and public land community, we unfortunately have quite a ways to go. And at VMPA, we're really committed to doing that work, to listening, and to making sure that we create a more equitable community, and that we really make sure Voyageurs National Park is a safe, inclusive, and accessible place for all. And we're already examining ways that we can ensure our education and youth programs are more inclusive. And I know, like many of you, I always find that spending time in nature, and especially taking time to look up and examine our skies, really helps me reflect and listen better during these challenging times. And so I hope today's program helps bring that to you, because I think looking up, we can really remind ourselves of our interconnections. And I know when I listen to Bob, he always helps me, really make sure I'm taking that time to look up, explore, and also to reflect. And at the end of this program, we'll share more ways that more resources you can use and more websites you can use. But with that, I really want to turn things over to Bob King to lead us through our program today.
Thank you very much, Christina. I appreciate that. Great to be back again on another lovely day, which precedes another beautiful evening. I hope it'll be clear by you guys tonight. Wonderful to have you all back, and also new people who haven't visited before. As always, I wish you clear skies. I hope you've had a chance in the past couple of weeks to do a little bit of nighttime stargazing, whether that's for exploration or to learn a little more about the sky, or simply for relaxation. I kind of like to combine all three of those things when I go out to look at the night sky. Once again, to kind of introduce you to simple resources, and we do have links to these too that you can click on after this talk. As always, the free sky map from skymaps.com that you can pick up and print out, that features a map of the nighttime sky along with events through the month of June. And this map is renewed each month at the skymaps.com website. On the backside are other things you can look at through a telescope. Or you can, of course, use a star wheel, or what we call a planisphere. There it is. This is the Phillips planisphere. This is good for every day of the year. You rotate it in and out, and you can pick any night, any time to look at the sky to show you what the sky looks like. And of course, one of our favorites is just the phone app. And we do have an earlier talk about how to use that phone app, how to set it up on your phone, and that link will be renewed for you again after this talk as well. It's called Star Chart, and that's the free phone app for iPhone and Android. Well, I hope, like you got it, like me, you got a chance to see the full moon rise a couple of nights ago. It was just fantastic. It's always such a fortunate thing when the sky is clear, especially right down to the horizon. That doesn't often happen, but when it does, it's wonderful to see a full moon rise. So I'm going to switch over right now to a little presentation that we'll start with talking about what you can currently see in the nighttime sky, and then we'll shift from there to asterisms, and you'll learn about it, what an asterism is and how they're so helpful for finding the constellations in just a moment. So let's depart here, although I'll still be with you. And we're going to take a look at some photographs now in a presentation for you. This is the full moon coming up a few nights ago over Lake Superior, actually over the Wisconsin shoreline, and beautifully squashed and beautifully orange too. Of course, the orange color is caused by light. The white light from the moon is made of violet and blue and yellow and green and all the colors of the rainbow. But the atmosphere, the very air molecules, scatter away the blue and the violet and a good part of the green light coming from the moon's white light. And so what's left is orange and yellows and reds. And it's scattered because when we look at the moon, when it's next to the horizon, we're looking through the bottom of the atmosphere, where the air is thickest, where there's the most air, very dense. And that air is really good at scattering away those cooler colors. So we had the full moon, and now it's past full right now. So the moon is actually in waning gibbous phase, just after full and before third quarter. One thing that was really cool I noticed, and perhaps you noticed this too, either at that moonrise or a previous moonrise, is what happens before moonrise, just after sunset. If you look out towards the eastern horizon, opposite the sun, you'll often see a dark gray purple band right along the horizon. It's a couple fingers thick if you reach your fingers out at arm's length. That is the Earth's shadow. That's the very shadow of our planet on the atmosphere, and it creates this dark, dark band. You can actually see the planet's shadow, which is a fascinating thing. Right above it, you'll notice there is something called the Belt of Venus, one of the more poetic phrases here in astronomy description. The Belt of Venus is orange colored, and what it is, it's sunlight that is being scattered back by the air molecules way at the top of the atmosphere, at the stratosphere. So the sun has set for us, but it's still kind of lighting up the high atmosphere, and we see that as a pink belt above the rising Earth's shadow. Oh my gosh, it's June. If you live in the eastern half of the country, you will start to see, when you go out at night, fireflies or lightning bugs. And this is one of the things that I love about the summertime, and also about being a nighttime observer, because you're not just taking in the night sky, but there's all of nature around you as well. There's the fragrance of the air, the sound of the frogs or the insects. And especially in June and in July, we have fireflies that are out. And last night, this was taken last night from a little north of Duluth, Minnesota. And you can see them flashing down here with their various patterns in a bog and a field beneath the stars. When you're out, be aware when you see fireflies, if you pay a little bit of attention to them, that the ones that are doing the flashing are the males, and they are flashing to attract the attention of the females that are on the ground. And when they flash the right way, the female will respond with her flash. Each species of fireflies has a different kind of flash. Some flash with a single pop, and other ones, like this one, have 3 quick flashes. So they're wonderful. A wonderful part of the night is to enjoy the fireflies. Here's some fireflies of a different sort. You may have heard about the Starling satellites. We have talked about them here. And these are the satellites being launched by SpaceX, 60 at a time. Right now, there are 480 of them up there in orbit. And by the year 2027, there will be approximately 12,000 of them in orbit. Together, they will provide internet access across the globe. Of course, you'll have to pay for this service if you're interested in it. Astronomers and people like us sometimes are concerned that maybe they're lighting up the night sky too much and they get in the way of sensitive observations and photographs, especially done by professionals. So SpaceX has been dimming them using different techniques. And the last launch was noticeably fainter than previous launches. Here's a time exposure, and you can see kind of a line like a train, a whole bunch of them, but many were too faint to show. The next launch will be on June 13th, and I'd love for you to see it. There'll be no moon in the sky, and if they pass through, you might be able to see them no problem. So I'll have information about that next launch on my blog coming up in the next week. Speaking of the next week, we've got tomorrow morning, the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars will all kind of be strung out in a line in the dawn sky. The best time to go out to see this is around 4 o'clock, maybe an hour or so, hour and a half before sunrise. You just look at the moon and it'll guide you to the 3 bright planets of the dawn, which are Saturn and Jupiter on the right and Mars on the left. All quite easy to see. They really stand out across the southern sky. Can you believe it? Venus is coming back. Venus was last with us in the month of May, and it dropped down. We talked about how it rapidly dropped down towards the sun and disappeared from the evening sky. Right now, it's still too close to the sun to see. It's lost in the glare, but it's gradually moving up and away from the sun into the morning sky, where it will become the morning star. And it'll be right next to the crescent moon in the eastern sky about 45 minutes or so before sunrise on June 19th, not long before the summer solstice. So be sure to check that out. Again, I'll be doing a blog on that in the future weeks, so watch for it and I'll have more specific directions. But what a beautiful pairing that will be, the returning Venus and a very thin crescent moon. Here's a map, or a diagram, I should say, showing you how Venus switches from one side of the sun in the evening sky to the other side when it's visible at dawn. Back in the month of May, it was off to the left of the sun. So from our viewing perspective on Earth, it appeared to the left of the sun, which meant the evening sky. It was a thin crescent lit on the right side. Then Venus passed almost directly between us and the sun, called a conjunction, solar conjunction, on June 3rd. After June 3rd, Venus keeps on moving, because it's in an orbit around the sun, right? Keeps on moving to the right. And when it moves to the right of the sun, it pops out again into the morning sky as a crescent. And so here we have Venus's position for late June and early July of 2020. So it just made that transition right before your eyes from evening to being right near the sun, and now it's moving back into the morning sky. Well, our main topic today is going to be about asterisms. Asterisms are really fun. I really enjoy them because they're bright and they're easy to see, and they're a great way to kind of get to know the constellations. It's a familiar pattern of stars, and it's not an official constellation. I kind of wish all asterisms were constellations. They'd be so much easier to find, but they are the key to locating the constellations, to expanding your knowledge of those constellations. The most familiar asterism has to be Orion's Belt, right? Many of you have seen those 3 stars at a slant in a row, 1, 2, 3, and beautiful, easy to see, bright. It forms the belt right here of Orion. And using these 3 stars, once you locate them, you can branch off, going up to find Betelgeuse, going the opposite direction to find Rigel, and then drawing a box around the belt. It forms the main outline of Orion, the hunter. So asterisms, while they're not constellations, they are our guides to finding the remainder of the constellations so that you can see the full figure. Let's look at another. Very familiar, right? The Big Dipper. There it is, hanging up in the northwestern sky right now. During twilight, you can start to see it, and then it's very obvious once nightfall happens, about a couple hours after sunset. Hangs there with the bucket facing down towards the northern horizon. The Big Dipper is actually an asterism. It is not a true constellation. It's part of a much larger constellation called Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And there's another group right here, 3/5 to the right of the handle of the Dipper. This little group, another asterism, is called the Lozenge. So we have these two groups hanging up in the northern sky at nightfall. The Lozenge is actually the head of a much larger constellation called Draco the Dragon. Let's take a look. There you go. I added the lines in for you. Now you can see that the Big Dipper is the easy part of the Great Bear. There's one of the bear's legs, and there's the claws there at the end of the foot, or paw, pardon me. There's the bottom of the bear's belly, and there's another leg going down, and here's the head of the bear, there's his nose, and so on. It's a more extensive constellation, isn't it? That's the full group, the actual group. And look over here, there's the lozenge. The lozenge is the head of Draco, and you can see the coils of the dragon work their way back towards the Big Dipper. When I looked at Draco the other day, I have a garden, like many of you have gardens, and I looked down at the ground at my garden hose, and I thought, you know what? That looks like Draco. So now when I look up at Draco, I think of a garden hose. I can't get the image out of my head. Here's the mythological figures. We have like three layers in the sky, right? We've got asterisms, the bright familiar groups that lead to the constellations. And finally, the constellations have mythological representations. So you can see the outline of the bear. That's meant to sketch it as a stick figure, right? And here's the dragon, a stick figure version of an ancient dragon. My gosh, the northern sky is just loaded with asterisms. Check it out. There's the Big Dipper. I've outlined the asterisms in white here so you can see them better. Once again, the Dipper. And look at this. There are asterisms within asterisms. The two stars at the end of the Dipper's bucket are called the pointers, or the pointer stars. And these point directly to Polaris, the North Star. You can see it down there. Sometimes I lose my pointer, forgive me for that, it just disappears. There's Polaris, so they point to Polaris, so we call them pointers. The Little Dipper is actually an asterism too. There are additional stars around the Little Dipper that form a little bear, Ursa Minor. You see Draco, there's the lozenge. Cassiopeia is the W, which is also an asterism. There are additional stars that form the throne of the queen. And my gosh, one of the favorites, and I bet a lot of you have not seen this, but I'd love for you to go out and look. If you find the Big Dipper and you look a couple of fists at arm's length to the left of it, you're going to see 3 pairs of stars coming down like this to the west or to the left of the Big Dipper. And these are called the 3 leaps of the gazelle. And these groups are actually an Arabic asterism, goes back centuries, and represents the hoof prints of a gazelle leaping from a pond because it was startled by a lion. And they're up there too. They're not a constellation, they're just a pure 100% asterism. We're going to switch our gaze now. We're going to turn around, and instead of facing north, which is in this room, north is this way, we are going to pivot 90 degrees, and we're going to face east. And when you face east early in the evening, halfway up in the eastern sky is this very bright star called Vega, or Vega. Vega is a star in the constellation of Lyra. We don't need to know that for now, not important. But you can use Vega to look for the lozenge. Now we found the lozenge using the Big Dipper, but you can also go to the other end of it and use Vega to find the lozenge, I can't say it, and then work your way backward along the coils of the garden hose. You can also take Vega and go up and to the right instead of up and to the left, and you'll find another rhombus, a little group of 4 stars, not quite a square, like a squish square, and that's called the Keystone of Hercules, the strongman. So let's say you find Vega, you find the lozenge, no problem, you find the Keystone. Well, the Keystone is your key, pardon the pun, there it is again. It's your key to finding the remainder of a large gangly constellation called Hercules, the strongman. There he is. So here you've got your center, all right? This is your guidepost. And from this guidepost, you can branch out to find the constellation Hercules and increase your knowledge of that part of the sky. Asterism by asterism, constellation by constellation. This is a simple one. My gosh, you can see this from downtown almost anywhere. The spring triangle, even though we're now approaching summer, this figure is still visible in our June sky. Easy to find, look way up high, and you'll see a bright orange pink colored star called Arcturus. Arcturus is right here. Then head over to the right and connected to Denebola, that is the star in the tail of Leo the lion, and then drop down and hook up with Spica, another bright star. That's in Virgo. And these 3 stars together, if you can imagine lines between them from the spring triangle, and each one heads up a separate constellation. Arcturus is the brightest star in Boötes, the herdsman. Denebola, second brightest star in Leo the lion, and Spica, the brightest star in the constellation of Virgo. This is the view again facing south-southwest around 10:30 p.m. in early June. Here's what it looks like in the sky for real. There's the spring triangle, no problem. Again, you're finding the brightest stars, you're connecting them, and they allow you to make further connections to the constellations. How about another one? We got 2 more, maybe 3. Remember Arcturus? Well, if you find Arcturus, you'll notice that there is a pattern of stars near Arcturus in the shape of a Y. The brightest stars in this constellation area that includes Boötes, the herdsman, and Corona Borealis, the northern crown, form an easy to see Y. See that? Arcturus at the bottom, and these several stars that form the top of the Y. If you can find the Y, then you can begin to connect these other stars to form the outline of Boötes, the herdsman. The top part always reminds me of an ice cream cone. Here's the ice cream part. Here's the cone with Arcturus at the bottom. And if you got a good ice cream cone, you know that sometimes they'll put chocolate down there at the bottom. Man, I love that. The other side of the Y takes you to Gemma in Corona Borealis, which is the northern crown. And there it is. It's pretty easy to see, this little crown. So use the Y to locate those 2 different constellations. And now, this has got to be like the 3rd most famous asterism in the night sky. It's the summer triangle. And all you do is you keep facing east, right? Because we were just at Vega. So we're going to stay at Vega, and we're going to use it to draw a triangle to Deneb, another fairly bright star, and then drop way down below to Altair. Deneb is the brightest star in the constellation of Cygnus, the Northern Cross. Now, its Cygnus is a swan, but the Northern Cross is an asterism within Cygnus, the swan. So it's another asterism within that virtually the whole constellation is an asterism because it looks so much like a cross. Down here, Altair heads up Aquila, the eagle. And back at the top, the brightest star of the 3, Vega, heads up Lyra, which is a small harp. Lyra, the harp. So Lyra, Aquila, and Cygnus, There are 3 bright stars. They will help you find those constellations. When you do, you can't help but notice, especially if you're in a dark place, country where there's very little light pollution, one of the most beautiful, magnificent parts of the Milky Way, certainly one of the brightest, lies within that triangle, crosses right through it, and that is the northern part of the Milky Way, the northern cross section. There's a special bright patch right here that takes up 2/3 of the cross, and that's called the Cygnus star cloud. You got to see it. Point your binoculars at it. It's really rich, worth a drive to the country. And the whole works is just coming up right now in the eastern sky. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me click back. I forgot about the coat hanger. Our final asterism. See, there it is, little tiny guy there, nicknamed the coat hanger. It's just below the end of the cross on your way to Altair. Now, you're not going to see the coat hanger with your naked eye, really. It's there, but it's fuzzy and faint. But if you take a pair of binoculars and you point it at the coat hanger, you're going to love it. It really looks just like its name. Here's a photograph somebody took of it. There's the bottom of the hanger. And here's the top. See how it curls around? That's the hanging part. The coat hanger is upside down in the sky for northern observers. But if you live in the southern hemisphere, it's right side up. Northern Milky Way. I talked about it a minute ago. Here's the time exposure. Can you see the summer triangle here? I'll give you a second. Yes, I'm hearing yes. There's Vega. There's Deneb. There's Altair. There's our triangle. And look at this magnificence flowing through it. Billions of stars in that. It looks like haze to the eye. It looks like smoke or fog. But it's made of billions of stars. And they are so far away and so faint that their light blends together to make it look like cloudy billows. It's actually stars. Unimaginable numbers. So if you can take a drive to the country, the moon is now rising after midnight. We're past full, so the moon won't ruin the sky. If you're out at 11 o'clock, midnight, you're going to see this magnificent spectacle. Here's a whole map showing you lots more asterisms. My gosh, you could go nuts. If the spring triangle is not big enough for you, connect it to this star called Cor Caroli. Make it the Great Diamond. There's the Y, the Keystone, the Lozenge, Summer Triangle, Job's Coffin. Down here, coming up in the south, late at night, is the Teapot of Sagittarius. And within Sagittarius, there's a little asterism called the Milk Dipper. It's called the Milk Dipper because it looks like it's dipping milk from the Milky Way. So there's lots of wonderful asterisms. No surprise, you could see some of the telescope too. We kind of invent them on the spot, telescopic observers. And some have even gotten their own names now because enough people have seen them and have christened them, including Napoleon's Hat here, which is just below Arcturus. And I don't know, does that look like Napoleon's hat to you? Well, there it is. You can see that in a small telescope. And then here's a golf putter. Again, these aren't visible with the naked eye, but you can see them through the telescope. We love making patterns. That's what we do as people. We like going out and making patterns. They help us find our way in so many ways, don't they? They can help you find your way on the ground by recognizing familiar patterns around you. And they can also help you find your way in the sky to increase your, what I'll call the geographic knowledge of the night sky, starting with something bright and working your way to something fainter and a little less familiar. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions about any of these topics, or if you've got an astronomy question you'd like to ask, feel free, shoot.
All right, I don't see any questions yet, but I do have a question for you, Bob, because we shifted today's webinar back a week, and we don't want to confuse anybody if we're going to stick with the schedule of going the 16th or the 23rd. When would you like to have our next presentation, Bob?
Well, I think we can do the 23rd. That should be fine if you're good with that, and our viewers are happy with that. I'm happy to do the 23rd.
All right, we'll plan on the 23rd and continue every second week after that. So if you're viewing, you can get us back on your calendar as a regular program.
And I will say that if I could mention, that week might be a very helpful one in one regard. I've talked about comets in a previous webinar, but some of the comets kind of fell apart, never became bright enough to see easily. We have two more comets that are coming into the evening sky, or pardon me, one in the evening sky and one in the morning sky. That's happening in early July. So I'll be talking about how to find those comets. And I would like to mention that you might be wondering, gee, I'd like to see these asterisms that you talked about, Bob, but I don't have these maps handy. I do have all of these in a blog that I wrote today with all the information about these asterisms and others that you can just check out. You can just check out Astro Bob, and Voyagers will be posting a link to that particular blog as well. So you can just click there too.
We've had a couple questions come in. One of them is, how are the shapes of the constellations established?
Oh, they go back, most of them go back to the time of the Babylonians and the Sumerians. They really go far, far back in time, several thousand years BC. And many were handed down to the ancient Greeks and then on to the Romans. And they were carried through the Dark Ages by the Arabic peoples. And now we have them today. So they're very ancient constructs. Most of them are. The original 88, that was the number, or pardon me, not original 88, but there are 88 constellations now, but the original constellations really have deep, deep roots in time and culture. And they were established probably by ordinary people, shepherds, people who were out at night looking at the sky. People associated patterns of stars with stories because the star patterns reminded them of characters, mythological characters or animals or people. And so those have been bequeathed to us. There are newer constellations from the 17 and 1800s that were assembled from faint stars between the older constellations. Some of those are really oddballs. There is, for instance, a chemical furnace in the sky called Fornax. And there are other interesting creatures of the Southern Hemisphere, various birds that are up there. So a small part of them are rather new, but most are ancient.
Thank you. Next question is, if you're a beginner and want to get a telescope, what are some things that you should look for in purchasing a telescope?
It depends on what you want to spend, of course. But one of the things I really like in a telescope is stability. When I got my first telescopes, they wobbled a lot. And it's a common complaint I hear that people will try to find something through the eyepiece and barely get it in, and then it moves because the Earth is rotating. Of course, everything is moving through the scope. And then they can't get it back again because the scope is all wobbly. And that's why I recommend a telescope called a Dobsonian telescope. It's a reflecting telescope, so it uses mirrors to gather light from the stars. And the tube sits in a very simple saddle-like mount that pivots either in a circle like this or up and down. And it sits flat on the ground. It's really stable, does not wobble around. Very useful. And as far as size, if you're right in the beginning, look for a 6-inch Dobsonian telescope. 6-inch means the mirror that gathers your light is about 6 inches across. If you want a little bit larger and spend a little bit more money, go for an 8 or a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope. You really appreciate the stability.
All right, and another question asking if you do guided groups for star watching.
That's a great question. No, I have not done guided groups except when I teach community education over at University of Minnesota Duluth. And of course, those classes have been canceled because of the COVID-19 virus, but then we do go out on clear nights when I do those classes, and we go to a relatively dark place and look. But no, I don't as a rule do guided groups except through classes. Not that I'm open to it, certainly.
All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If you want to say anything before we end, go ahead, Astro Bob.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Well, I just hope that you get an opportunity, all of you, to get a chance to look up at the night sky, select one or two of those asterisms in the next couple of weeks, and see if you could find them, and then explore outward from them. Take yourself on a little adventure of exploration, and good luck to you. Thanks.
All right, as we wrap it up, just a reminder that if you'd like to find out more about the dark skies at Voyageurs National Park, you can go to voyageurs.org and dark skies. We have a collection of resources there, including the past webinar video sessions with Astro Bob and more information on the dark sky certification at the park. You can also go to Astro Bob's blog, which we have down here at the bottom of your screen. And as you were heard just a few minutes ago, our next session for our Night Explorer will be Tuesday, June 16th. Thank you again, everybody, for watching and supporting the Voyageurs National Park Association.